This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. A second investigative piece in the Houston Chronicle today reveals how Southern Baptist churches often miss sex offenders in the hiring and vetting process. It documents at least 35 pastors, youth ministers, and volunteers that were convicted of sex crimes or accused of sexual misconduct and allowed to work at churches. 10 years ago, Southern Baptist leaders considered a proposal that could have prevented some of these hires by creating a database to track ministers credibly accused of sexual misconduct. Leaders ultimately rejected the idea, however, citing the autonomy of local churches. Wheaton College's Ed Stetzer told the Chronicle he considers the pastoral hiring process to be problematic with no regulation or system. The wild, wild west approach to moving from church to church has some real consequences for people who don't know that the pastor they called is the pastor that got fired for abusing a child 3 churches ago, he said. And joining us now to talk about this investigation and how the Southern Baptist Convention is dealing with the issue of abuse right now is Dr. Russell Moore, the president of the convention's Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Moore.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk, first of all, about the process of how Southern Baptist churches hire new pastors. What do you think needs to happen so that sex offenders do not end up in the pulpit or working with children?
Well, there has to be some mechanism for churches to be able to share information with one another about when these incidents have taken place. The problem isn't so much with those who have been convicted of crimes, although that clearly is a problem as well, but that is more easily accessible. It's with those who have committed some sort of crime, been fired or been asked to leave, but it hasn't been disclosed then to the public or to the next church that person goes to. And so it's an enraging situation in which some predator can come in, destroy someone's life, and then simply move on down the road to destroy someone else's.
What do you think churches can do about that kind of situation?
Well, I think there are a number of things that have to be done systematically, really across the board, in terms of finding mechanisms for churches to know when this is going on. I think right now, in terms of a local congregation, I think that means training in terms of how to know when these awful things are taking place, what to do when they do happen, and so when there is an incident, to immediately report that to the civil authorities. This is not just a sin, this is a crime also, and that means that Caesar has to be involved as well as the church. And so there has to be due diligence being taken place by churches in making sure that they have situations that are not hospitable to predators, and that they very publicly deal with this when it does happen.
There, of course, is a lot on local churches because of the Baptist principle of local autonomy. But there's also right now renewed conversation about a Southern Baptist registry that would track offenders, people who we already know about that might hop from church to church. Do you support that?
I do. The question is not whether we do, but how to implement it. And that's what has been taking place. There's a study committee brought together. But was appointed last year when J.D. Greer was elected. He, as SBC president, he appointed this task force that's been working with law enforcement, working with psychiatric professionals, and working with survivors to say what's the best way that we can implement a system that can do just that.
I want to ask you, there's people in the denomination who appreciate the sorrow that leadership has shown this week in the wake of the Chronicle investigation, but they're also saying, where was the outrage over a decade ago when the need for a database was first raised and when others began publishing stories and calling for reform? In essence, they're saying what has taken so long for the denomination to get to this point that it's really publicly and vigorously looking at this issue. What is your response to them?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think what we can see is there is a time of change in the Southern Baptist Convention, of generational change, and so what I'm seeing is before this article, really with the events that were taking place in April and May of this year, and really going back about 2 years, a number of things. Change toward people who are deeply concerned about these issues and are willing to implement them, but also the renewed and invigorated presence of Southern Baptist women. Southern Baptist women have been courageously leading in this area in really remarkable ways.
All right. Well, I know that we are all rooting for the denomination to address this. So, Dr. Moore, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Lawmakers in New Mexico are pushing for what's being called the most extreme pro-abortion law in the nation. The bill, known as HB 51, removes conscience protections for healthcare professionals who believe it is wrong to abort unborn babies without any definitive state or federal protections. The bill also gives doctors who are not licensed the right to perform abortions. The measure passed the New Mexico State House by a 40-29 vote. It now moves to the state Senate, where Democrats have a strong majority. In the wake of extreme abortion measures across America, Focus on the Family is taking a stand for life on one of the country's biggest stages. Tonight on Faith Nation, we speak with Focus President Jim Daly about the upcoming event in Times Square. That is on Faith Nation tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel. Well, California's governor is seeking to withdraw some of the state's National Guard troops from the U.S.-Mexico border. Governor Gavin Newsom says he had wanted to withdraw all troops, but will keep some in place after consulting with Guard officials. Newsom said California troops have been operating cameras and doing other surveillance work that can inadvertently aid in federal immigration enforcement. Former Governor Jerry Brown agreed to deploy troops last year, but said the troops could not engage in immigration activities. Newsom called the situation at the border a manufactured crisis and says he won't participate.
This is pure politics, period, full stop. And the rest is just, frankly, just a lot of misdirection. It's a waste of everybody's time. And so we're just not going to participate in it. We're not interested in perpetuating this.
The governor wants to reassign 250 troops to other drug-related activities as well as wildfire prevention. The Trump administration has not commented. Well, in Washington, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle and from both the House and Senate have announced a tentative agreement to keep open the government. It is the latest move in the battle over border security. Our Mark Martin joins us now in the CBN newsroom with more. Mark?
Heather, the big question is, will President Trump sign the measure? The president said today he's unhappy with the latest agreement to prevent a shutdown and fund the building of more barriers along the U.S.-Mexico border. But he did not say he would not sign the measure. Trump said everything is on the table, but we certainly don't want to see a shutdown. Late last night, congressional negotiators held a closed-door meeting and reached an agreement in principle on border security. The new agreement does not give the president the $5.7 billion he wanted to build a wall. It provides only around $1.4 billion for fencing and other physical barriers, 55 miles of a new structure. Trump wanted 200 miles. But Democrats agreed to not limit the number of detention beds. They allowed the funding of 40,000 beds, a 17% drop from the current number.
Hopefully, this agreement means that there won't be another government shutdown on Friday.
I hope the Senate can act on this legislation in short order.
Last night, the president referenced the new agreement at a rally in El Paso.
As I was walking up to the stage, they said that progress is being made with this committee. Just so you know, we're building the wall anyway. They say that progress has been made with this committee.
But today, Trump said he needs to look more closely at the deal. According to the Associated Press, he said, "I can't say I'm happy, I can't say I'm thrilled." And he said the wall's getting built one way or another. Heather, back to you.
All right, Mark, thank you. A Muslim member of Congress has apologized for making anti-Semitic comments on Twitter. Representative Ilhan Omar's apology came Monday at the urging of Democratic leaders. In her apology, Omar said anti-Semitism is real, and I am grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes. Omar's Twitter comments created a media firestorm over the weekend. She said a pro-Israel lobby group was buying support by making campaign donations to members of Congress. Republicans say Omar's comments are just the latest in a disturbing trend of anti-Jewish sentiment coming from within the Democratic Party. Senator Marco Rubio suggests Democratic Party leaders don't know what to do about it.
There's a growing group of people in the Democratic Party that are anti-Israel openly, and I think they're afraid of them.
House Democrats also lent their voices to a bipartisan backlash against Omar's remarks. Well, acting U.S. Defense Secretary Pat Shanahan arrived in Iraq today as part of his unannounced visit to the Middle East. The top Pentagon official is meeting with American military commanders and Iraqi government leaders on the future of the U.S. troop presence in Iraq. Shanahan, who is on his first visit to Iraq, also met with the country's prime minister. He said he wants to hear firsthand about the state of Iraq's fight against remnants of the Islamic State group. Pakistani Christian Asia Bibi is reportedly being kept from leaving Pakistan despite her asylum offer in Canada. The Christian woman was previously convicted for blasphemy. She spent 8 years on death row after being charged with insulting Islam's prophet Muhammad. A final Supreme Court decision last month rejected a bid from hardline Islamists to have her acquittal overturned. She was supposed to head to Canada to join her children, but now is unable to flee the country. Bibi and her husband have been moved to a new supposedly secure area and are locked in a room. Sources told AP that Bibi says she doesn't know when or if she will get to leave. Coming up, new research is out linking brain inflammation levels to who we are. Up next, we'll tell you how we can drive away depression and think more clearly.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I Wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphan's Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
New research shows that lowering inflammation in the brain increases empathy, compassion, and planning for the future. But if you have high levels of inflammation in your brain, that can lead to impulsiveness and being less considerate of others. Dr. David Perlmutter, brain expert and author of the revised bestseller Grain Brain, broke the news to CBN's health reporter Lori Johnson.
In our discussions, nobody wants Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, those degenerative conditions, but mood is so highly influenced by these choices. And we now recognize, which is really exciting, didn't know this when the first edition was written, that the actual ability of us to connect to the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that allows empathy and compassion and planning for the future, that connection is emphasized when we've reduced inflammation.
Wow.
In higher states of inflammation, we connect to a lower part of the brain called the amygdala that makes us much more impulsive, much less likely to consider the feelings of another person,
wow,
and much less likely to think about our actions in terms of the future.
And CBN's health correspondent Lori Johnson joins us now with more. Lori, this is relatively new. Is this just something that Perlmutter has discovered, or is there a growing body of work around this?
There is a growing body of work around it. It's research, it's brand new, and it's really, I think, blows the lid off of so many things that we're dealing with right now. We talk about depression all the time and suicide and mood issues, and it turns out these things are very directly connected with inflammation, and inflammation is largely caused by eating the wrong kinds of foods.
Oh, wow.
People
Okay.
say, well, what is an inflammatory food? Sugar is at the top of the list. Also, these refined carbohydrates like white flour, and we see these in everything, the bagels, the cereals, the pizza dough, on and on. But then here's something, Heather, that a lot of people don't realize is extremely inflammatory, which are omega-6 fats. And before you tune me out, and oh, that sounds weird, omega-6 fats are fats like vegetable oil, canola oil, peanut oil, all those oils that we use so often that are in the plastic bottles that line the grocery store shelves, and that people at restaurants and fast food places, processed foods, they use those oils. Why are omega-6s so bad? Because our body needs about the same amount of omega-3s and omega-6s, and most Americans eat 20 times more omega-6s than omega-3s, and that causes massive, massive inflammation. So we need to increase our omega-3s. That's fish oil. Everybody knows that. So we should all be taking a fish oil supplement and lowering those other bad oils. So what oils do you use? Coconut oil. Believe it or not, butter's okay. Avocado oil as well.
So is diet really what is controlling inflammation in the brain then, or are there other ways that you can help control that?
That's right. Diet is the #1 issue, but also sleep. If we don't get enough sleep, it causes all kinds of crazy things to happen. We tend to eat the wrong things, but it causes a lot of stress, and that all leads to one awful thing, inflammation. So how do you get better sleep? A lot of people struggle with getting a good night's sleep, and one of the keys is to not have any caffeine after noon, but another huge one is not to look at any electronics 2 hours before bed. And if you feel like you have to, and if you're still struggling with sleep, use those amber glasses. They're on sale everywhere at Amazon, and they really work. They kind of filter out the blue light. Blue light from the computer is worse than the light that comes from your television.
Yeah, it's interesting. We are just beginning to understand how phones and technology really affect our health. I want to ask you, too, about fasting, because I know we hear a lot about that right now, and how does that affect the brain?
Excellent, super great, but a lot of people are like, oh no, fasting is so hard, I can't go without food. Really, everyone can do this thing called intermittent fasting, which is the minimum of 12 hours of fasting per day. That's easy. That means, like, let's say you stop eating dinner at 7 p.m. and you don't eat again until the next morning at 7 a.m. I mean, basically, you're cutting out late night snacks. If you want to really boost it even more, you can push that breakfast a little bit later, or push that dinner up a little early, maybe eat dinner at 5 and don't eat breakfast the next day until 10 or 11. And the longer you go without food, believe it or not, that really strengthens your brain. It seems counterintuitive, but that's the way it is.
All right. Okay. So it's all about food and diet, and consider intermittent fasting. Lori Johnson, thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
All right. You can also watch Lori's entire interview with Dr. David Perlmutter on healthy living, which airs on the CBN News Channel tonight at 9:30 Eastern Time. And after the break, what companies are accused of committing, or at least tolerating, sexual exploitation on this year's Dirty Dozen list.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
You might be surprised at some of the famous names accused of committing or at least tolerating sexual exploitation. As Paul Strand reports, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has just released a fresh list.
As in years past, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has just put out what it calls the Dirty Dozen list.
This is the 7th year where we've named 12 large entities who are really responsible, we would argue, for the mainstreaming and the normalization of sexual exploitation in our culture.
Among them, big names like Amazon, Google, and United Airlines.
We hear repeatedly from individuals who fly on airplanes and even from flight attendants that they've been victims of sexual assault and harassment during flight. And it is our belief that United is doing the least to train their flight attendants in how to deal with this.
Responding to this story, a United Airlines spokesperson quoted United's own CEO saying, "Sexual harassment, inappropriate behavior, intimidation, or predation have absolutely no place anywhere in our society, especially on our aircraft." And the spokesperson added United has strengthened training for flight attendants to recognize and respond to sexual harassment. The list includes well-known media players like HBO, Netflix, Roku, Steam, and Sports Illustrated's swimsuit issue. And this year, even the state of Nevada with its legalized prostitution.
30% of women in the brothels, in the legal brothels, were perhaps victims of sex trafficking.
Retna says she was traumatized by a sexual assault at Massage Envy, another of this year's Dirty Dozen.
And it just blew up in my face like an atomic bomb. I was dazed, I was confused, I cried a lot.
There are almost 400 reported cases of sexual assault at the hands of Massage Envy's therapists.
Retna says the company did the least possible to answer for the assault.
Okay, you can have a free membership. I'm like, okay, seriously?
A number of victims have reported their assault to managers and to Massage Envy corporate, and nothing has been done. And these therapists have gone on to assault others.
A Massage Envy spokesperson told CBN News it urges anyone experiencing anything other than a safe massage to report it to the franchise location. And they said franchisees are required to supply any guest claiming to be a victim of sexual misconduct contact info for local law enforcement and the state board. People can fight back against sexual exploitation by checking out DirtyDozenList.com.
They can go to our website and send an email directly to the CEO.
The list isn't just about naming and shaming, but also changing those who are on the list. And you can have a part by putting pressure on them. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Up next, where and how you can watch vintage evangelical broadcasts featuring the one and only Billy Graham.
When you give,
smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Come home to the Southern Gospel Station from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern Gospel favorites. CBN Southern Gospel. Available now at cbnradio.com.
Amazon Prime Video has just made available over a dozen movies produced by the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. The 17 films include timeless movies and feature films from the late evangelist, including The Hiding Place, The Restless Ones, and The Last Flight Out. Worldwide Pictures produced the evangelistic films, many of which featured Billy Graham himself, as a way of reaching people who wouldn't regularly find themselves in church. And before we go, a programming note for you. Be sure to check out our CBN News Daily Rundown podcast. Go to cbnnews.com and click on the show tab to find the Daily Rundown page. You can subscribe there and get a look behind the scenes as we cover news around the world and here in the U.S. And you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues that you care about most at cbnnews.com. Please tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here, and you can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope that you'll join us next time. Have a great day.